Hi everyone, this is Tony from WordStream. Just coming up on the hour here. We still have some folks trickling in. It's going to take a few minutes here. We'll get started just past the hour. I'm going to put myself back on mute in just a minute here, but I can see some folks trickling in. So just we'll get started in a few minutes, and hope everyone can sit tight and look forward to getting going. All right. Hi, everyone. I think we're going to get started here. We'll have a few more folks trickle in, but wanted to get going. Definitely excited to bring you guys this webinar today, Paid Search and Social Advertising Made Simple. Definitely wanted to focus specifically on the law industry today and talk through some of the challenges that present themselves, particularly on online advertising. It can be tricky. There's a lot of competition out there. So to get started, like I said, my name's Tony. My colleague Jason is joining here. He's a GLM member. I'll have him introduce himself in a few minutes. But we'll get going here. Just for those of you that aren't familiar with WordStream, we're an online advertising software. We'll get into that a little bit more, and I'll share some of the details there as we get going. But our main goal is making online advertising easy and accessible for everyone. And like I said, we'll get into that there. But I want to get started with some information here, particularly in the law industry and so forth. Okay, so just a few quick housekeeping items here. Again, like I said, we're excited. We partnered up with Great Legal Marketing to bring this to you guys. I think we're aligned on what we're trying to do for our businesses, trying to make things easier for you folks so that you can, run your business. But we want to provide the tools and anything marketing material that's necessary to help everyone be successful. So quick housekeeping, logistics, webinar will be recorded. So for those of you that have to jump off, we'd love for you to stick around the whole time, but we'll get it recorded and make sure that it gets sent over to you, or if there's anything that you missed, you can replay or reach back out to me. And we'll have some time definitely for Q&A at the end here. So hold your questions till the end, but there is a section in GoToWebinar for those of you that are logged in to go ahead and submit questions in that field there. So if you have any thoughts or anything, definitely pop them in there, but I'll be answering those at the end. Okay, so introductions, just a quick intro. Myself, I'm Tony Testaverde. I'm our Director of Lead Acquisition here at WordStream. Been with WordStream for about 8 years, since we were a small tech startup in Boston to now a big company that's since been acquired. And we've grown from a handful of clients to thousands of clients worldwide. And again, with that similar goal throughout the years that I've been here is just making online advertising easy. It's always ever changing. And we want to make sure that people run the WordStream marketing campaigns, are in charge of getting our leads for WordStream itself. Prior to that, I worked within our agency world within WordStream here, basically our managed services offering, and worked with a lot of clients, definitely a lot of those in the legal space, so I'm familiar with it. I've managed the campaigns for hundreds of accounts, so I'd like to share some of that knowledge today. And then, like I mentioned, also have a colleague here that I'm really excited to have join us, Jason Williams. He's a marketing director at the Miley Legal Group. He's a GLM member and was willing to join today. He works with WordStream. He's a customer, but also a colleague, and so excited to bring him on board to share his experiences, not only with WordStream, but with online advertising in the legal space. Certainly he has a lot of challenges that you guys face and things that he's overcome and learnings that are super valuable. So I wanted to have him join, and really fortunate to have him today. So Jason, if you wanted to go ahead and introduce yourself, that'd be great.
Sure. My name is Jason Williams. As Tony said, I'm the marketing director for the Miley Legal Group. We are a 3-lawyer PI firm, personal injury firm, and I, as my title suggests, do the marketing for the firm, which does include our digital marketing, and more specifically, our Google Ads, as well as our Facebook social media marketing.
Awesome. Thanks, Jason. So yeah, we're super excited to have Jason on board today. I'm going to be covering a lot of the content, and Jason has a lot of experiences and things that he can share that he's gone through. Not, like I said, not only as a customer, but as a marketer. And so we're excited to have him on board to share his experiences. All right, so to get going, like I said, I'll go through this quickly. We're a software company. We'll talk more about that at the end. Our main focus is, we help people with paid search, paid social, online advertising. The goal that we have is to make it simple, have the ability to do it within 20 minutes a week and make an impact on your paid accounts so that you can get back to doing what you need to do for your business. So we'll go through that a little bit more, but that's our kind of main shtick, and we'll get into that a little bit later. But main focus of today, we'll talk through paid and social in search, a lot of the opportunities that are presented in sort of an ever-changing landscape, and a lot of the challenges that are presented as well. We'll talk through strategies for achieving success. We'll focus a lot on Google Ads, because I think that's where a lot of the pain points are, but also opportunities on Facebook. And like I mentioned just now, we'll talk about how we feel we can help in 20 minutes a week, and then we'll have some time for Q&A. Awesome. So I wanted to start with this slide, and it's just a simple screen grab here from Google, but it's pretty telling. I did this research here, and it's just basically looking at the average cost per click, particularly for personal injury lawyers. This is in the US. And, for those of you in the space, that it's quite competitive, and average cost per click can have a lot of range depending on your business, where you are, who you're targeting, your geography, the keywords you're going after, and so forth. But, at a minimum, looking at this with the average cost per click being between $150 to $250, obviously that presents a lot of challenges for marketers. Every click wasted is, can be a really big hit to the wallet. Obviously, the reason why that the cost per click is high in this industry is because there's, a lot to be gained by getting cases, but, at the same time, a poor account structure or things that are, ever changing within Google can present a lot of challenges. And every time you waste a click, a poor search query or whatever it may be, it can be a pretty big hit to the wallet. And so what we'll talk about today is really, how to be defensive against that, how to not waste dollars. But again, this first few hits here, personal injury lawyer, $156 to rank in that top page position, which is necessary to get traction. Car accident lawyer, $200 cost per click. The competition is stiff, particularly in bigger geographies, whether it's New York or Boston, whatever it may be. But again, at the end of the day, there's going to be a lot of variance here, but it's a super competitive industry, and we'll talk through some challenges there. Jason, I don't know if, obviously, like I said, it ranges quite a bit through, who you're targeting and where you're going after, but what have you seen from your side from a competitive standpoint? What's been challenging in terms of cost per click and things that you've seen from your side?
I will say that the cost per click that I've been seeing in terms of specifically Google AdWords, it's gone up. It's gone up consistently year over year over year. So trying to find ways to control that has become one of my priorities.
Got it. Yeah, definitely. And whether it's legal or whatever the space may be, like I said, I'm responsible for our WordStream account, which is we spend a lot of dollars, millions of dollars a year on paid search, and every year cost per click has gone up. I've pretty much seen that across every industry that I've ever worked in. It gets more and more competitive every year, and without kind of knowing the latest things and taking actions each week, like that trend should continue. And again, it can be a big challenge. So we'll talk through some ways to address that today. Just at a high level, kind of a bird's eye view of what's going on in the industry. Obviously, everyone, no surprise here, Google Ads is the big player in the space. 3.5 billion searches a day. A lot of those are unique every day. It's not that, you can have keywords that you set up in your account for a long time, and about 20–30% of the searches each day are unique. So that's challenging because there's always new things to be added. There's always new trends. It's also, expanding. It's not just Google anymore. There's YouTube. Google owns YouTube. There's over 1 billion active users on YouTube. There's spend going there as well. Obviously, Google has that broad reach. 90% of global internet users are on Google, but also on the display network. Google Display Network, we'll talk about that in a bit, but that's the remarketing, that's the ads that you're seeing on websites and so forth. And so, that's an area of opportunity, but also can be an area of challenge for folks. Spending on the display network can be a lot of volume, but a lot of poor volume at the same time. So we'll talk through some strategies in that today as well, but there's opportunity there. Everyone's there. We want to be there, but again, it's a quick way to burn dollars if you're not careful. Again, like I said, we'll talk through Facebook as well, but Facebook, that's become a big player. Like I said, I've been at WordStream for about 8 years. Facebook wasn't on the radar when I started, and then it became, a decent place to do some targeting. Obviously, Facebook has a lot of information about people. You give a lot of information over to Facebook. You tell them your age, your birthday, your email address, and so forth. So they have a lot of demographic information. Obviously, that's kind of become a big player in the space. It's been Google's biggest competitor now, 94% of internet users there, 65% people there on almost every day. They also own Instagram, which is a growing space as well. 90% of global internet users, very similar to Google now. It's become somewhat of a duopoly there in the space. And so, it's a big opportunity, and a lot of it's on mobile. And so we'll talk a little bit about that as well. Mobile on Facebook and Google can create challenges as well. But, no surprises that Google and Facebook are the biggest players in the space, but just keeping in mind that Facebook continues to grow its market share, continues to eat some of Google's revenue. We want to be present there, but we want to be present in a smart way that doesn't burn dollars. So a question that I get a lot is, which network is best? Obviously, like I said, Google's been around for a long time. People have seen results, but hey, now there's Facebook. Where's the opportunity? Should I start just peeling dollars away from Google, put them over to Facebook? It's almost 50-50 now in terms of volume. Should I spend half my dollars on Facebook? So what does that look like? So some background, like I mentioned, the average cost per click is going to be a huge variance depending on what you're going after and so forth. And this can be a little tough to see, but the big takeaways here are a couple things. One is that legal, like I said, is no surprise, the highest average cost per click on Google by industry. It's typically the highest one. And there's some keywords within there that always top we do the top 25 keywords by cost per click from time to time, and about 20–30% of those are often in the legal space. So that's the biggest, most expensive cost per click is within legal. And then on the right side here, Facebook, there's a little variance where it's not always legal is the most expensive, but the average cost per click in general is cheaper on Facebook, and it has a broad reach. So that question kind of comes up is, okay, if the cost per click is cheaper on Facebook, so I spend some more dollars there. So we'll talk a little bit about what that looks like. So a couple things, Google, high intent, right? Those people are going to Google for a purpose, looking for an answer. Whereas Facebook, it is a more passive audience. People are there sharing photos, talking with family, friends, and members, and so forth. And it's a little bit more of that passive audience. You're not necessarily going on to Facebook to find your lawyer, although you may. So the intent there is on Google, but the sophisticated and better audience targeting is on Facebook. You can go target people based on where they live, what their interests are. People often put their profession there. Where Google doesn't have that information, they try to deem it by what you're doing and your behavior on the web, but it's not as accurate as Facebook because Facebook, you're sort of self-selecting that information in. So what does that look like? Where's the best opportunity? And like I said, the big opportunity really is kind of a combination of the two. And there's good synergy, and we have some data that backs up how these work together. So we'll get into that a little bit more as well. Jason, we'll get into a little bit more in some of the strategies here, but you've spent a lot of time on Google. I believe you dabbled in some Facebook. On your side, where have you spent the most of your dollars and more of your time? And, we'll dig into a little bit deeper in the strategy and so forth, but just at a high level, what have you seen on your side?
Like I said earlier, we do run advertisements on both Facebook and Google. Obviously, we spend more money on Google, a considerable amount more on Google, but we still do. Facebook does have value for us in term. We've actually have cases that we've signed because of some of the Facebook ads that we have out there that we can tie directly to Facebook. So there is value in both, but like you said, there's different strategies for Google type ads as well as versus Facebook ads.
Yeah, for sure. So we'll be a little bit of a theme throughout here. We're going to focus a lot on Google because that is where the intent is, and particularly in the legal space, people in that moment, they're going to find things that they're looking for, and they're going to look for help, and they're going to do their research, where Facebook is that more of a passive audience. But to Jason's point, book some cases there, there's opportunity there, and we'll talk about how to kind of tack that on to what you're doing on the Google front. So some interesting information here, like I mentioned on the data side, Facebook, one thing it actually does do is, so in that first slide, I showed you some keywords that are, personal injury lawyer and so forth. And that's where the majority of your volume is going to come from. People looking for what you do, they're in that moment, they need a lawyer, they're going to go and do those types of searches. But there are going to be people that have become more familiar with your kind of brand over time. There are lawyers out there and so forth that everybody kind of knows, and they're not just going to come right, they may, but oftentimes they'll do their research, they'll check out a bunch of different lawyers, they'll visit 10, 20 different websites before they come back to you and talk to different folks and so forth. So one thing that's interesting is actually by having presence on Facebook, people actually they'll see your ads on Facebook and then maybe actually just come directly back to Google and do a search specifically for your business, or just come directly to your website. So this data here is basically showing, three things. So only on Google search, what that brand search intent would look like. We actually have seen when people, we'll talk about Bing a little bit more, but when people are on Google search in Bing, there's a 26% lift in the kind of branded searches. So people actually looking for you specifically versus just looking for a lawyer. Google Plus Display, like I mentioned, and we'll get into a little bit more, is the display network. Again, creates some brand awareness, generates a lot of impressions. People see those ads and actually gives a 31% lift in brand searches. And the winner is search and Facebook. So people may come to via Google search, go onto their Facebook at some point, hopefully see your ad again. And then when they're finally in that moment to make a decision, they're actually a lot more likely to just come directly to you, to your website, or do a search for you versus kind of going out there and redoing a more generic search. So you want to be there for that purpose because it can drive branded search awareness, which is actually something that you want over the long term, because people finding you for who you are, those clicks are going to be free on organic, or if you have paid search ads for them, they're going to be a couple dollars versus $200, $300, whatever it may be. So having those together can actually have more people coming directly to you versus going out there and trying to do random Google searches until they find someone. So good opportunity there. But we'll dig into sort of the meat of this a little bit more. So I want to talk through about 7 key strategies here, to achieve success in Google Ads and Facebook. So we're going to talk about long tail keywords, negative keywords, high cost keywords and what that can do for you, talking about bids, particularly within the Google front, splitting up ad groups. There's always a challenge within having a good account structure is really important to save you on your cost per click and have good quality scores and so forth. Text ads, what you need to do, what your ad should look like, how to take advantage there. And then we'll talk more about expanding into Facebook and kind of recapturing those website visitors. So first slide, again, strategies to achieve success. First one is definitely focusing on long tail keywords, right? So hitting that exact audience at the right point in the customer journey. The example I show here is, there's that search for personal injury lawyer that I showed in that first slide, which was around $156 for the US. When you actually become more specific, best personal injury lawyer in Boston, somebody's kind of self-qualifying themselves a little bit more. We're in Boston. This is something that I would do if I needed a personal injury lawyer. There's less volume here, but it's more intent. Typically, we'll have less competition as a result, have a higher likelihood to convert, a better quality score. So that's Google's relevancy score. Basically, will kind of give you a discount if you're more specific. And you can actually have better tailored ad copy and so forth. You can have ads that talk about being in Boston and maybe some testimonial about being the best and so forth. So, you're going to need obviously a good amount of keywords to have coverage, but when you're paying so much per click, you really want to make sure you're focusing on the highest intent keywords possible, because somebody looking for a personal injury lawyer, obviously could be, if you're a personal injury attorney, is going to be something that's really valuable for you. But when somebody is starting to add more qualifiers to their search, in Boston, best, reviews, they're getting further along into that journey where they're actually going to have a higher likelihood to pick up the phone and give you a call or fill out a form on your site. So you're going to want to continue to add long tail keywords throughout your account and so forth. And so having that sort of broader term is good for volume, but it's also going to be one of your more expensive costs per clicks because there's so much competition there. So the more specific you can get, the lower your cost per clicks, lower competition, and a higher likelihood to convert. So Jason, I don't know if you have any commentary here. We'll talk about this a little bit more as I get into it, but obviously when you get started, a lot of times folks will have a handful of keywords. Personal injury lawyers, obviously a core term, but over the course of, you've worked on your account for a long time, obviously you're probably adding keywords and so forth for, hopefully weekly, monthly, whatever it may be. Have you seen better results as of adding newer, longer tail keywords throughout your account?
Yeah, I think we have found the most success in the longer tail keywords. And when I initially started with Google AdWords and digital advertising, that's not something you really think about, but you have to consider what people actually search. And so that's what you're looking for. You're looking to show up on those searches.
Right, exactly. And so, having that keyword in there like personal injury lawyer, it's going to trigger, depending on your match type and so forth, but it could trigger a lot of different queries, and it could trigger based on this, the search below, best personal injury lawyer in Boston. But what you want to do is over time continue to add those keywords into your account so they can further tailor your ad copy and, again, pay lower cost per click because these are the better terms for you. Keywords, big thing in the legal space. Obviously, like I said, every click is really expensive. So, there's a lot of volume out there and a lot of people doing, legal research, or, they they may be just searching for a lawyer or something generic. And if you're a personal injury lawyer, you probably don't want to pay for, well, there may be like a asbestos keyword or something that's particularly expensive if that's not a case that you support. So, going through and mining your search queries regularly and adding negatives is super important. So, if you have that keyword personally injured lawyers on broad match in your account, what can actually happen is, Google is trying to match to things that it seems relevant, but it can also just be something that seems thematically relevant. And, it may not be something that's personally injury lawyer related at all, or it could be somebody looking for a legal book, and you could, although your keyword is personal injury lawyer, because it's thematically related, it could be a book about, the legal profession, and you could end up paying for clicks, 20, 30, 40 or more dollars for a click that is completely irrelevant to your business. So, adding negatives, going through that on a weekly, daily basis, and being really restrictive on things that you're going after becomes more and more important, because, you're not bidding on something that is, 50 cents a click, and it's okay to generate some poor traffic because it doesn't hit your wallet so much. But, people going through and doing searches can get you a lot of money really quickly. So, having negatives, having a strategy, going through and adding them regularly so that you're preventing yourself from showing up on terms that are unrelated is super cool. I don't know, Jason, if you've had a lot of, obviously over time, you've probably added a lot, but almost every week there's new stuff to be added. I don't know if there's anything kind of crazy that you've seen on your side or anything that's wasted a lot of dollars from your front, but, there's definitely a huge opportunity there if it's not something you're doing regularly. We see on our side that most people aren't even doing this on a weekly or monthly basis. But from your perspective, Jason, how important have negative keywords been in your strategy?
I think it's become one of the most important, because some of the keywords that come up are the search terms that come up you don't want to show up on. Somebody's searching something that's not even related to your service area, and so weeding those out, because even though, like as an example, I've seen some of the searches that come up are just general names of certain attorneys in our area. And since Google sees them as personal injury attorneys, we're almost paying a personal injury click cost for that search. In fact, most cases we are. So trying to immediately, I make that a negative keyword. I don't want people searching for a certain attorney in our area for us to end up having to pay for that, when that generally doesn't lead to anything.
Right. Yeah, that's a good point. I've definitely seen that in legal accounts that I've managed. There's, particularly when you're getting into a specific geo region, there are definitely lawyers that are competing against you, people doing a lot of really specific names. And to your point, those can still be, because Google sees them as relevant, they can still be very expensive. And going through that regularly, like all of a sudden you could see, Joe Smith, the attorney, cost you $500 in a day, because people are searching for him, and maybe just they're looking for his phone number and they're already a client of his. So going in there and scrubbing that regularly is critically important. Another point here, key point, just high cost keywords with low return. So what, to my point earlier, personal injury lawyers is a pretty specific keyword, but what can end up happening, and what I see this quite a bit in a lot of accounts, is highest volume terms oftentimes will actually, because they're so high volume, they eat up your budget almost and don't give your other keywords a chance, right? And so if you don't have a good account structure, what can often happen is, that one keyword, if you're bidding on lawyers or something really generic, it could burn up your whole budget in the first few hours of the day and not give your good terms the opportunity to show, because you maybe set a daily budget for, $700 a day, and 600 of it went to the keyword lawyers, which is not, of quality. You have the other keywords, and maybe you've added a lot of keywords to your account. You have best personally injured lawyer in Boston in your account, but because you have this high cost term that's high volume, it can actually kind of take all that budget and cannibalize your budget and not give opportunity to your other accounts. It's kind of like that 80-20 rule. You actually see this in quite a bit, and it's one of the biggest mistakes I see in a lot of Google Ads accounts is just having a fixed budget, and all the budget going to, one or two terms. And there's all these great quality terms. They're long tail, they're more specific. They actually have a lower cost per click and a higher likelihood to pick up the phone, but they're not getting the opportunity because there's one keyword in there that's taking up all the budget. So if you do want to bid on a term that's more generic, that's fine. Recommend having in its own campaign with its own budget and letting other keywords in different campaigns so that you can control it accordingly. But definitely kind of monitoring those high cost keywords pretty regularly. You'll often see that they have the highest cost and lowest conversion rates in a lot of accounts that I've seen. So definitely go through it in your accounts. If there's one thing to do, there's a lot of things to do, but definitely take a look, and you'll probably see that there's a couple of keywords that are eating the most of your budget. And you want to make sure that they're either pulled back, have a lower bid, or whatever it may be, in order to give your best keywords the best opportunity to show, because they may be getting kind of, like I said, cannibalized by a couple of key terms. Adjusting bids. So obviously this is a critical one. You definitely want to be looking at this regularly. There's good opportunity. Google's automated bid strategies have gotten better, but at the same time, you don't always want to give your hands and keys over to Google because it doesn't necessarily know your business and so forth. So there can be some fear around that, and it's totally understood. But at the same time, like I said, you may be overbidding or overpaying for certain keywords. If you have a fixed budget and you're trying to bid up to a top position, that makes sense. You want to show and you want to be there, but at the same time, you may be overpaying for a click. If you're paying $200 for a click and you have $1,000 a day budget, you're only going to get 5 clicks a day. If you can bring your bids down accordingly, closer to $150, $100, whatever it may be, you can actually kind of double your volume. So you really want to go through and focus on your bid strategy. If you're doing manual bid strategies, oftentimes you might want to take what we call a tiered bidding approach. So say you are bidding on something more generic, like lawyers or personal injury attorneys. Those oftentimes you may actually want to have your lowest bid and then bid up higher for those that are more specific, because what will happen is if you have a more generic term with the highest bid, again, it can kind of cannibalize all of the other keywords, where if it has a lower bid, kind of create a funnel, the higher bids will actually hopefully show first and take up more of the budget. And so going through regularly adjusting bids, bid strategy is critically important, making sure that you're not overpaying per click, particularly if you have a fixed budget every day. You want to pay the least that's possible, but also, of course, you want to rank, you want to make sure that you show and get volume. So, low bidding isn't always a horrible thing, but you don't want to bid so that you're on the second page either and never show. But, adjusting bids regularly is critically important piece of and I recommend it at least once a week. Splitting ad groups. So this is, a really critical piece. Oftentimes, like I said, I've worked on hundreds of thousands of accounts, and going into each ad group, there's only so many ads. There's only the best ad ever could not cover, all of the keywords that you're going to have in your account, right? So if you have 200 keywords, 2,000 keywords, whatever it may be, there's no way that a handful of ads can cover and be more specific, right? So if you go back to that first example with, the Boston, Mass personal injury lawyer, if you're covering different geos, you definitely need those types of keywords to be in different ad groups, right? If you're covering Boston and the North Shore of Massachusetts, or Boston and some suburbs and so forth, you don't want your ad to read, if it's Worcester or whatever it may be in Massachusetts, you don't want it to read Boston, you want it to read Worcester. So you'd actually have to have separate ad groups for that to be the case. So, splitting ad groups is pretty critical. You don't want to have more than 20, 25 keywords max within an ad group because of that challenge where the ad cannot be as relevant to the keyword as possible. And then back to that point about quality score, again, that's Google's relevancy score from 1 to 10. The more you kind of continue to split your ad groups out, oftentimes you'll see better quality scores, because what Google likes to see is relevancy, right? So having an ad that matches the keyword, that matches the landing page and so forth is really what contributes to quality score. And the higher your quality score, the lower your cost per click and the better your ranking. So splitting ad groups is pretty critical. And, every account I've ever seen has the opportunity to kind of do this and split it out and be more and more specific. You don't want to go crazy because it becomes a management issue. If you have a keyword in every ad group and 2,000 ad groups, it just becomes impossible to manage. But you definitely want to have it so that your ads are as relevant as possible. And those ad groups that get the most volume, you want to, over time, continue to kind of split them out more and more so that they can be more and more specific. Jason, on your side, I'm not sure if you've had, obviously you had your account for a while. I'm not sure if at the beginning, if you had kind of things more grouped together, or if you continue to split out ad groups over time. Is there any strategy that you've seen from your side that's been successful to kind of help you increase your quality score and your relevancy?
Well, over time, I did learn that we needed to create the separate ad groups. But one of the things that also helped me, basically, I could isolate what niche was most profitable for the firm, and so I was able to kind of narrow that down through splitting up the ad groups and seeing what was working, what was not working, and again, what was most profitable, and so then I could focus on that area. So that's kind of what I did.
Excellent. So yeah, that's a good point. So not only, in the way I was describing things is sort of all else equal, but to Jason's point, you want to have, you may be willing to pay more for a certain cost per click or whatever it may be if the case that you land is going to be of much more value than some other keywords that you're ranking for. So you're kind of splitting those ad groups and creating separate campaigns and so forth so you can control the budget and control the bids accordingly so that you are sort of optimizing not just for quality score and cost per click, but for ROI. So splitting things out into separate ad groups, into separate campaigns, you may end up seeing that you're becoming more profitable within a certain campaign and that you want to funnel more dollars there. So splitting that up is critically important for that piece as well. And then, text ads, obviously there's been a lot of changes there. This is something, Google is continuing to evolve its paid search, obviously, from when the original days where the ads were different colors and so forth. And now it's really, the ads have become more and more specific and longer and bigger and, over time moving organic search to something that's going to be less and less prominent because, of course, Google wants to make the most money. And the way it can do that is by having, bigger ads, but also more relevant ads. I'm happy to click on a paid search ad if it's going to bring me to what I want. So Google's gone ahead and continued to expand its ads. So originally there were these standard text ads, and then they had what they called expanded text ads, and those have become even more expanded. So there used to be one headline and 2 description lines. Now you can have 3 lines within your headline, and the description lines are getting longer and so forth. And what's interesting is that this feature has been out for quite a long time, and it's evolved and it's become more and more expanded. Yet accounts that we've seen, we have a lot of data that comes through and so forth. There are still, majority of folks are not taking advantage of all the features that are there. So you can get an advantage. You can have a bigger ad, a more compelling ad, a more descriptive ad by going in, checking your ads, and making sure that you're going through and adding as much as possible within those expanded text ad features. If you go into your account now and click, you may often see that, there's actually another space there that I can go ahead and add. So we'd recommend continuing to A/B test your ads as much as possible, but continue to take advantage of those. They have higher click-through rates. Google's smart. They know they're going to get a better click-through rate and they're going to make more dollars, but it's good for your business to get a higher click-through rate. You're going to have a lower cost per click and get better quality, and you can be more descriptive and, be better for your prospective clients. So, definitely make sure that your ads are all in that format. They're taking advantage of all the new features, and also that you have multiple ads running within each ad group. It's a pretty basic concept, but it's still something that we see in accounts that's not being taken advantage of. Google now recommends 3 ads within an ad group, which I think is good. Obviously it comes down to management. You don't need to have 10 different ads within each ad group because, again, there's only so much time that you're going to have in a day, and if you're running a really strict test, then fine. But at this end of the day, you want things to be manageable. So 2 or 3 text ads within an ad group is key, but take advantage of all the features. You have the opportunity to be differentiated because still to this day, people are not taking advantage of the expanded text ads, even though it's been a feature for a long time. And check your accounts because there've been times and accounts that we've managed, and then this has changed, and then it's like, oh, there actually are more ads that we haven't gone ahead and updated yet. So make sure your accounts are up to date with all the latest features. So we talked a lot about kind of Google Ads, because we do think that's still, particularly in the legal space, you want to be there at the moment of intent. But because it's so expensive, it's really easy to spend all of your dollars, within a handful of keywords, and then your whole budget. And, you have a fixed budget for the month, the year, or whatever it may be. And you might realize it's going all to, a handful of keywords, which is okay. But at the end of the day, we want to get as many cases as you possibly can and be as efficient as possible. So you want to have your core keywords and go through all the things that we just talked about to make sure it's structurally sound and you're paying the least per click and getting the most clicks possible. But at the same time, you don't want to necessarily spend every dollar you have there, because there's opportunity to bring people back to your website for a more affordable cost and a higher likelihood to convert. So critical thing, remarketing, for those of you that aren't aware, I'm sure you've all seen it. You visit a website, you leave, you're on another website, and all of a sudden you see the pair of shoes you were just looking at, or the car you were looking for, or whatever it may be. You'll see it on your Facebook as well, your Instagram, wherever you may be, you're going to see ads. And, that's just the world we live in today, which is good for marketers, because we have the opportunity to bring people back. So to my original point, you're getting people to your website through your keywords. You're paying, it could be $10 a click, it could be $250 a click, it could be more. That's pretty critical, and that's very expensive. But you can bring them back significantly cheaper. Remarketing is still really cheap. It doesn't matter what space you're in, if it's legal or if it's e-commerce or whatever it may be. There's so much volume out there. Remarketing is super inexpensive on the Google Display Network, and you can bring people back to your website for, it's going to depend on where you're showing, but it could be $1, it could be $2, it could be $5, but it's not going to be $200. It's going to be significantly cheaper. And those coming back to your website, again, people aren't just, more often than not, they're not going to come to your site, pick up the phone on the first call or the first visit, and come in and get your help. They're going to do more research. They're going to visit multiple websites. They're going to call multiple folks and so forth. So we're actually going to more likely to, book a case or whatever it may be that you're trying to do is going to be second, third, fourth, 10th, 20th visit. Sometimes it's crazy, but that we've seen that. And that's where you want to kind of come back and bring them in. People that visit your website the second time around are significantly more likely to actually take an action than the first time, because they're more familiar with you. And so getting it set up on the Google Display Network is pretty key. It's pretty simple to get going, and it has huge reach. Like I said, it's a lot of the websites on the internet, 90% is available there. And you want to take advantage of it as often as you can and as far reaching as you can. So there's the Google Display Network. You're going to see those standard banner ads. Some of you may have those that are in there. They're pretty static, which is okay, because there are certain websites that are only going to support that type, but there's more to be had now. There's HTML5 ads, which is this example here that Jeep is using, that expands your reach even further, and obviously they're more dynamic and more likely to click if they're seeing something that's moving and more compelling versus just a static text ad. So you want to take advantage of not only standard image ads, but also HTML5 ads. It's a new feature from Google. It's been around for a bit, but it's evolved and it's become something more and more prevalent. And you might be saying, I don't have the bandwidth to do this. I don't have a creative person in-house, but it's actually a lot easier than you would think. The tools are available out there. They're free tools. We have a tool. Google makes it a lot easier now, and you want to really expand that reach. So, having remarketing set up, these clicks are cheaper than people that have been to your website, and I can almost guarantee that it's going to be successful for you. It's been very rare, if ever, that I've seen remarketing just not help at all in any account. And to that original slide where I showed some of the value of kind of display network plus Google, people becoming more familiar with your brand, it's critical in that piece too. Maybe they don't necessarily click the ad, but they see it, they come more familiar with you, and then a couple of days later they come back. So having remarketing is set up is pretty critical. And having every format available is actually really valuable now, because you can expand your reach that way as well. Jason, on your front, I know you've actually done some remarketing. Originally, you may have only had some keywords in place and so forth, but what success with remarketing have you seen? What have you been able to do from your side? You're a marketer, but you have a lot of other things going on as well. What have you been able to do and see success with from a remarketing standpoint?
I think remarketing for us is more when the people that are searching, they've hit our website or somehow either gone through social media and hit our website. We use remarketing as a tool to kind of target those that are further down our funnel, those that have shown interest, obviously. And so the type of ads that we use for our retargeting are those that we feel will strike a chord with those that we know are actually searching for an attorney. So we've been able to experiment with that and try to determine which ads have a better click-through rate based on what they actually see in the ad.
Yep, exactly. And so what's really fantastic about remarketing is, you can have it set up so that it's basically all visitors to your website, but you can actually be really, really sophisticated with it now. And so pretty much any behavior that you've seen on your website or core pages, you can set up audience based on basically anything anyone has done on your site. So someone who's spent 10 minutes on your website is oftentimes a lot more likely to take an action than someone who spent 10 seconds on your website, right? So you can do targeting within remarketing that's based on time on site, or if there's a critical page on your website, which is like the contact us page or whatever it may be, you can set up an audience for people that have visited that page. And then, to Jason's point, you can have more better specific ads that can strike a chord. So they've come to, maybe they visited the, auto injury page on your website, and then you can have an ad that is talking specifically about auto injuries and so forth, and what value you can add there and strike that chord. So your messaging can be way more specific than just kind of a, all visitors catch all, hey, here's my, I'm Tony's law firm, here I am, pretty generic. It can be, hey, you visited this page. You don't have to call that out in your ad, but hey, because you visited this page, I'm going to send a message to you that's more. So, and like I said, this is actually just a grab from one of the tools that we have. We can actually create display ads just from our tool. It scrapes your website, pulls images and so forth right into your ads. And so the key thing here is that you used to need design resources to create compelling ads for display. That's not the case anymore. Anyone can go ahead and build ads. Google even lets you do it within their platform to some degree, but it's not as sophisticated. But you definitely can have, you've probably put some time into your website. There's imagery there that you can use. There's your logos and so forth, and you can actually pretty easily pull that together now. And so you don't necessarily need to pay a creative industry and so forth for, building these for you, and it's not complicated, and it's not, you don't need to code or anything like that. You can actually, there are free tools. We have a tool, obviously want to promote that, but obviously at the same time I just recommend, just even going within Google's platform or finding a tool out there. You don't need to be a creative to do this anymore. It's available, it's easy. Our tool does it, and you can actually create the HTML5 ads that I talked about. You can create standard image ads pretty easily now and change your messaging, tweak it and so forth, and have display creative up and live really quickly without having to go through an agency and whatever it may be. So Jason, I know you've done some of this on your side. Have you seen success with using tools to create image ads?
We have, and to be totally honest, I've actually used this WordStream function to create some of the retargeting ads that we use, and to kind of because I'll be honest, I don't have a background in graphic design or anything like that. So finding things like this to help it make it easier for me to do and to do quickly has been helpful.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And it doesn't need to be perfect, but you can get something up there that's really great, and you can iterate and test against it. But I'd err on the side of being aggressive, trying to get this out there, test it, and then, iterate versus spending too much time trying to, like be overly creative and so forth in your ads. Like, you want to get something out there. It's going to work. It's going to be much cheaper than, your clicks on the search network. So building that up and getting it live is something I would definitely recommend. And then just test, test the ads. If they're not working, tweak them, and get them more and more specific over time. But definitely, remarketing works. Get it live, get something out there, and test against it. And then, to my point, there's the Facebook side as well. So, have your Google search campaigns up and running, have your keywords, get that all cleaned up, expand to Google's display network on remarketing, because that works really well. But there's that huge other kind of gorilla in the space with Facebook, and remarketing works. It's cheap. So don't just do it on Google, go over to Facebook and expand your reach. And to that slide, like I mentioned before, it actually can bring people back and have them be more familiar with your brand. On average, 96% of people who visit a website don't do anything. So you need to, you're paying all that money to get them there, and 96% of them are leaving. And if you're not kind of trying to bring them back as much as possible, you're really losing out on opportunity. Things happen down the funnel at WordStream. We're not a law firm, but this rings true with every account for the most part, unless you're doing something that's very, very soft offer, just like an email capture. Even that, depending on your industry, can be challenging. Things happen as people take more and more steps throughout the web. We see people come back 2 years later to our website. They visited our website 50 times. They've downloaded a few guides. They've hit us with, our email messaging, and they came through a Facebook ad, remarketing ad, and finally they actually took an action and became a customer. And, if you're not playing in that space down the funnel, that's, your most valuable pool of cookies or people that you can go after. And so you want to do it as much as possible in an efficient way. And so that's on Google, but on Facebook as well, because they visited your site, even if they're on Facebook, which is a more passive sort of network, there's still that, oh yeah, I'm still in the market for an attorney. I've seen your ad, I come back, and then maybe I do a search or whatever it may be, but they're going to come back to you. And Facebook's actually cheaper still on remarketing. And it's the same audience, it's the same people, whether it's the Google Display Network or Facebook. Their mindset may be different at times, but it's cheaper, and it's still that remarketing concept that you want to expand as much as possible. So Jason, we talked about that a little bit, but on the Facebook front, have you seen success with remarketing? There's other, more generic targeting on Facebook as well, which can be valuable, but where have you seen some of your success on Facebook specifically?
I think on Facebook, we actually run I'm thinking, maybe running 5 different campaigns, because you can do a lot of different things. Once they hit your website, like I target people that have hit our website but are not Facebook fans, even though that may not have a huge value. It's you still want them to like your page and to get some of your content. We've got retargeting ads that are specific to visitors of our page that land on a page that has to do with a car accident. We actually run cold ads to cold traffic that we may have tweaked a little bit based on some of their interests that we can grab through Facebook. But we run cold ads. We have a book offer that we run out on Facebook. I think we have one that does one of our reports as well. So we try to cast our net wide on Facebook, because like anything else, it's changing. You want to see what you can get out of it, and it's cheaper than Google Ads. So why not try it?
Exactly, and I liked one of the points you mentioned too. So obviously remarketing is a big winner, but it doesn't always have to be remarketing on Facebook. You can target people more generically based on audiences and so forth and their interests. And regardless, you can have a softer offer. It doesn't have to be, hey, pick up the phone. It could be, if you have a piece of content or something that's interesting, you can generate leads that way. Or it can just be the first time they come and visit you, and it's maybe you pay $1. They visit your website, and they've seen your ad, they clicked on it for a reason. They hit your website, and you paid $1 to get them to your site, and maybe they don't take any action, but now they're part of that cookie pool that I mentioned. They're part of that remarketing list. So, maybe they're not ready, but they did come to your site for a purpose, and now they're in that, again, that group where they can be remarketed to on Facebook, on Google, and so forth. So, paying for visitors in that regard, just to get them there, and then, kind of nurture them down the funnel. It doesn't always have to be someone who came through and did a really specific search. It could be somebody who is a little bit more passive, but does need an attorney. And, they haven't necessarily gone through, or maybe they have, but they come to your website for the first time because they saw your ad, and now they're familiar with you. And then they're, when it's time to make a decision, they've been to your website, they're getting hit with your remarketing messages, and maybe they actually convert, and you didn't have to pay $200 to introduce them to your business and your site. You paid $2, and when the time was right, they went through and committed. So kind of building that group of people and your traffic to your website, it retains value, if you do remarketing and so forth, and kind of build that cookie pool up. So that's another good point that you made there. Call tracking, big one, particularly for lawyers. If you're not doing call tracking, I would highly, highly recommend it. 43% of all search-related conversions happen over the phone. I'd be surprised. If all of you, if not most of you, are or would think that somebody that's on the phone with you is more valuable than somebody that filled out a form on your website. They called. You're going to get some not so great calls sometimes, but somebody picks up the phone and calls you, and they're looking for a lawyer. Is going to be really valuable. You can talk to them, understand. They're going to be a lot more likely to actually work with you if they're speaking with you versus just filling out a form on the site. So you really want to have that set up correctly. Like I said, 65% of businesses consider phone calls their best leads. I don't think that would surprise anyone. And it's worth paying more for a phone call than it is for a form fill. So if you're optimizing your Google Ads account and you're not tracking calls and you're really just optimizing for form fills, you're really missing out on a big opportunity, right? And where call tracking comes in is, one, you can track your calls, you can record them, you can have them tied all the way down to a specific keyword or audience or landing page or whatever it may be, and then optimize accordingly, right? So in the example here, if you're using the same number for the keyword personal injury lawyers, auto injury lawyers, work injury lawyers, like if you're someone that does auto cases and then work cases, and oftentimes there's going to be different values associated in terms of what you would get for a case for somebody who's hurt on a job versus somebody who's hurt in an auto accident. If the work injury is more valuable to you, you want to be able to track that and optimize it more effectively, right? You'd be willing to maybe pay more for somebody who was hurt on the job than somebody who was hurt in an accident, or vice versa. But if you are willing to pay more for that person, you want to bid up, be more aggressive with your bidding, show more often. And if you're kind of tracking everything equal, you don't know what's happening. You don't know if, the phone call that you received from someone for an auto lawyer is tying back to your keyword if you don't have call tracking set up. So highly recommend creating unique phone numbers. There's call tracking. We have a solution. Doesn't have to be ours. Google allows you to do it to some degree. There are a lot of solutions out there, call tracking metrics, whatever it may be. I would recommend it getting set up. And this is not only for your paid, to be honest, also organic as well, and understanding where people are coming from. You really need to know who they are, how they got to you, and be able to use unique numbers to optimize accordingly. And if you do it specifically on the Google Ads front, like I said, knowing if it was a number, this last one here, the 1214 number for work injury lawyers, that can tie to the keyword. You can see that a conversion was triggered off of that phone number, and you can optimize your bids, your strategy accordingly based on that conversion type versus just kind of counting everything equal. I'd be probably one of the first things I'd recommend to lawyers, because there's oftentimes high variance in the cases, and can be not only in the case type, but in the geography. Like, a case in Boston could be worth more than someone in the suburbs, and whatever it may be. And you really need to get that set up so that there are unique phone numbers attached to them so you can optimize accordingly. I can't really stress that enough. Jason, on your front, I know you've done some phone call tracking, and when we were speaking, I think it expanded beyond paid search, but what are some of the benefits you've seen from using unique phone numbers for your online marketing?
Yeah, that's one, and that's one of the GLM principles is tracking numbers, is tracking where your calls are coming from. So we track everything. I would say almost every piece of marketing, whether it's online or offline, has a call tracking number, and we use that obviously to measure. We have limited amounts of money that we want to spend on marketing, so we just want to make sure we're getting the biggest bang for those bucks. And the easiest way to do that is call tracking, is to find out where good leads are coming from, and so you can make adjustments.
Yeah, exactly. I recommend it in any service industry or whatever it may be. Anyone that needs phone calls, which is most businesses, and you can get kind of over optimized and so forth if you're tracking too many things. But I would say err on the side of over tracking, particularly with phone numbers. I'd rather know more. You can record calls. There's so much you can do there, and you can optimize. And if you're not doing it, there's going to be such high variances and so forth, and the opportunities that you see for keywords. And if you have a limited budget, invest some. It's not too expensive to set up phone numbers and really make those adjustments accordingly, because you could be paying, the same for one case that you are for another, and you really should be paying, be willing to pay more for one that is more valuable for your business. It really helps you optimize for ROI, but not just for conversions in your Google Ads account. So kind of in summary, we talked about a lot of things there, but you definitely want to, use both paid search and social, consistently adding long tail keywords, adding negatives, reviewing costly keywords and campaigns. Like I mentioned, there can be things that kind of eat all of your budget. Optimize bids, really take the time, regularly to split up your ad groups and your campaigns so you can optimize for ROI. Make sure your ads are up to stuff all the time. There's always new features that Google's rolling out. Then expand onto Facebook. Make sure you get your remarketing set up, and make sure you have call tracking set up. And then, you really do need to go into your accounts weekly and give them some love. The big thing is you only have so much time in the day, but it's worth it to just take at least a few minutes a week, touch your campaigns, make sure that you're checking your negatives, make sure that you're, splitting up your ad groups, because the return on your time is going to be really valuable. Because particularly in this industry, I've seen so many wasted dollars, and it could be wasting tens of thousands of dollars if you have a large budget. And, if you don't at least check it weekly, there are new things that come up every day. I've seen this where, maybe there's a big legal case in the news, right? And if you're bidding on something really general, and there's a prominent case in the news or in your area, searches are going to spike, and you may get a whole bunch of traffic for somebody, looking for information about a big case that was on the news, right? And if you don't go ahead and add that sort of search term, that it could be a specific person or whatever it may be as a negative, like you could see a huge spike in traffic, and it could be something that you're not aware of until, a month later that you spent $4,000 on a specific person that was in the news that happened to have a personal injury and so forth. So, you really need to go ahead and touch those things at least weekly, because, trends, things change pretty quickly. New competitors jump into the space and can drive up your cost per click and bid on your terms and so forth. So you really need to make sure that you are in there weekly. It's a lot of information. I'm going to go through these next slides pretty quickly. Like I said, I don't want to over stress the WordStream front here, but we do have solutions. Jason is a customer that we work with. We work together here on this presentation here, and to my point, you can go ahead and you can actually make an impact on your account in 20 minutes a week. And the way that we do it is we have what we call the 20-minute work week. It provides sort of actions and all the things that I just described. So it's negatives, it's ads, it's splitting ad groups and so forth. And it kind of condenses it all into sort of a quick work week. We can go ahead and make optimizations quickly and find the biggest, lowest hanging fruit for your business so that you're making those touches. There's always more to do within a Google Ads account, but at a minimum, you want to get in there for that 20 minutes a week and make adjustments because it can have a big impact on your business. So this is, again, what it looks like. This is just a generic account. It's actually focused on roofing, but you're going to see here on the left-hand side, the add negative alert, add keywords, optimize bids, a lot of things that we talked about. There's also some other alerts in here around like mobile bid adjustments and a whole lot more. But the critical piece here is that it's going to look at your ad groups. It's going to say, hey, here are some opportunities for you. You have an ad group here. In this example, it's around roofing. You're going to see things that you're showing up for, and then it's up to you to decide, right? Google is never going to know, never going to know your business like you do. So there's going to be that piece that pops up from time to time, and you have to give it that human touch. And in this example, you can see sort of like the Grafton. Again, this is about roofing, but you can see this Grafton example. If you're a lawyer, and you're showing up for Grafton, but you don't service cases in Grafton, like that would want to be a negative. So it's going to bring it to your attention. It's going to say, hey, you've actually paid for this. Here's what the actual cost could be. Do you want to go ahead and add this a negative? And maybe you don't. Maybe services cases in Grafton. You say, no, I want to leave that. You can leave it. But it's going to raise those things to your attention and say, hey, you've spent more dollars here. You want to go ahead and take a look at this because it's worth that 1 minute here to go ahead and make a decision on. And if you don't do those cases, you want to add that as a negative. Another example, add keywords. So same thing. It's going to look at things that you're bidding on, and it's going to say, hey, you actually may have paid for this already, or this is a related keyword that you might want to go ahead and add. And this is going to be the opportunity to find those long tail keywords that I mentioned that are more specific. And so we have kind of bubble up those same opportunities from a keyword standpoint. And then, it does extend to Facebook as well. So there's some alerts here, talking about refreshing your ad copy, how to get more leads as lead campaigns within Facebook, how to expand your audiences and so forth. So, it goes to the core things that we talked about, but there are more and more alerts as your account becomes more and more sophisticated. It kind of brings more opportunities to your attention. So if you're just getting started, if you haven't given a lot of attention to your account, you're going to really want to focus on those core things that we mentioned at the beginning and throughout the webinar. That's the adding keywords, adding negatives, and so forth. And then as your account becomes more and more sophisticated, you're going to want to go ahead and do more of the advanced strategies that Jason mentioned. One where he's doing some more kind of cold prospecting on Facebook. Like that would be a more advanced strategy once you get sort of the core things done. But there's always opportunities that are going to be kind of raised to your attention throughout the software. And before I go into this next slide, Jason, as a customer, are there any kind of features or critical pieces that you use regularly that have helped your business, kind of helped you be more successful in taking time there?
Yeah, and I'll be honest, the reason that we ended up moving to WordStream was because we had started we had opened our Google AdWords account in October of 2015 and had a relatively, or a small budget. And so we saw what we could get from advertising through Google and at Facebook as well, but we slowly added and put more into that budget. And so as we were spending more money, we needed some help to kind of navigate the process and navigate these changes that we needed to make and what to look out for. And so WordStream has helped us in that area. I do use the 20-minute work week. Once a week, I go through what the recommendations are, and I determine if it's a good fit for where I'm trying to get our account to, where I want to go, and I make those changes. So I do use that feature a lot. I also use the managing our ads feature, which makes suggestions on how we can improve our click-through rate on both the search ads as well as the display ads that we use for retargeting. So I do use that a lot. They have, WordStream has an extensive reporting function, so you can take a look at how your accounts are doing and review some of the changes that you have made, and maybe you want to undo some of those changes. I've had to do that before. So there's a lot of value that I've pulled from the software to help us not just throw more money at Google AdWords and at Facebook, but to do it in a smart manner and to make sure that what we are spending gives us a good return.
Awesome. Thanks, Jason. So don't want to spend too much time on us, but we do have solutions for a lot of things we talked about. And if there's one thing that I would ask you to consider doing is actually going, to our website, and we'll send some follow-up here, but you're running the Google Ads Performance Grader. You can go ahead, grade your account, super secure, and so forth, and it's going to bubble up a lot of the opportunities that we just talked about. And you're going to want to go ahead and kind of see what those opportunities are, and whether you become a WordStream customer or not. That's sort of beside the point. I'd say just at least go ahead and kind of see how you stack up. It kind of looks at the competition and kind of how you stack up in terms of the industry and so forth. So a lot of good information. You can go ahead and just do this within Google Ads to some degree if you want, by using the information within the Performance Grader. There's a lot of good free information there, so I'd recommend going through and taking that action. And then, like I mentioned, we do have the software that Jason was just speaking about. You can try for free. So we'll send some follow-up here, but at a minimum, you can easily go to the website, find these solutions, and you can test it out for free and see if it's something that would help for your business. So really appreciate you guys kind of hanging with us here. There's good attendance, and everyone stayed on for a while. Run a little over on time, so apologize for taking it, but I have some time, and I want to be able to get through some of these questions for you. And if you can't stay on, I'd love for you to stay on, but if you can't, we'll definitely follow up with the slides and so forth and a recording. So if there's something you want to revisit, you can go ahead and do so. But good amount of questions. I'll try to get through most of them. If I can't, just in the essence of time here, you can definitely reach out to me directly or reach out to WordStream. Someone will be able to answer these for you, no problem. But gonna go ahead and just jump into some of these here. So first one, let me pop this open, sorry. So let's see. What match type should be used for long tail keywords? So it's a good question. In terms of match types, you definitely want to have, what I often see is most of the volume in accounts is going to broad match, and broad match has a place. Broad match opens you up to volume. Broad match is, like I said, there's unique queries every day, unique searches, 20-30% of the time on a daily basis that are unique, and you can't have presence unless you have some sort of broad match there, or some broad or phrase match. So there's opportunity to do so, but you don't want the majority of your spend going through broad match. You do want to have it on those exact match terms. So as long tail keywords start to present themselves in your search queries, I would definitely recommend having them on a presence for exact match, for sure. If it doesn't, sometimes if something's too long tail, it's not going to have really low search volume. So, you may not necessarily get the volume that you want. So you may want to test different match types, but err on the side of having more exact match. Exact match, is going to be the lowest competition, the lowest cost per click, and you have the most control. Versus broad match can be a little bit more generic, and even though it's long tail, it can still match the things that are shorter tail and so forth. So I'd recommend starting with exact match. If you're not getting the volume you want, can loosen up the match types a little bit, but err on the side of having more exact match, particularly in the legal industry. A lot of these terms are high volume and high cost per click, and you don't want the majority of your spend going through broad. So let's see. There's a quick question here. This one's for you, Jason, that just asked about kind of your overall marketing budget per month. You can obviously share what information you have there, but in terms of how you're spending your dollars, like what percentage are you spending on Google, whatever you're comfortable sharing there. Is a specific question on it.
Yeah. Well, we do a TV spend, so obviously our television spend is a lot higher than what we spend for Google Ads. I will say it varies per month, again, because there are personal injury keywords are relatively expensive, and we're always testing things. So our spend varies, but we're spending anywhere, I'd say between $2 to $4 $2,000 to $4,000 per month on Google AdWords.
Excellent. Yeah, and we've seen that very similarly through a lot of accounts. And I've seen accounts that spend hundreds of thousands a month, huge law firms that have, multiple practices and so forth. So it's really just, dependent, on your industry and on your space and who you're going after. And to Jason's point, you're going to have a marketing mix. It's not going to be every dollar is spent. It's not every dollar at WordStream. We're a paid search company. Not every dollar we spend on paid is on paid search. A lot of it is. But we do other things. And so my recommendation is spend where you get the best return. I think on, Google Ads and Facebook is where you're going to get a lot of the best return for your dollar. And, it's the easiest oftentimes to measure and see your return. Think about that as you go ahead.
Yeah, and just as a disclaimer, we're not in a huge market. Every market is competitive, especially in the PI fields.
Right.
So your spending really is going to depend on your market too. And
the market, like you said, the market drives the price too. So, obviously people have fixed budgets. It's not like you have unlimited dollars, but, to be competitive in some markets is going to be more expensive. New York obviously is going to be more expensive than, a smaller city in the suburbs. But all are competitive, even at a local level. That's not a major city or geography, everywhere needs lawyers, and it's competitive no matter where you are. Another question here about what advice would you give a firm that is just starting to plan its first paid campaign? So, Jason, I imagine you have some advice because you've been through it. I'll give my 2 cents and I'll let you kind of follow up here. I would say I would definitely be a little bit conservative at first in your targeting and so forth. Try to be a little restrictive in your keywords and your match types. You don't want to go too restrictive and not get any volume and not have any idea, of testing and where you can spend your dollars. But what I don't want you to do is go on, throw $1,000 on a campaign and all of a sudden it can burn through in a day and you realize this doesn't work for me. And that's just not the case. Most often than not, Google Ads should work for your business and Facebook too. So be a little more restrictive, go after some core terms. You can't be a keyword can't always be a full sentence or anything like that because it's just not going to have the volume, but there is a lot of volume in the space for lawyers. So, be pretty specific, use restrictive match types, be really targeted, go for people that have the highest intent, and you can always loosen it up afterwards. I'd hate to see somebody spend, a bunch of dollars inefficiently and, have zero to show for it. And, make sure you have the tracking set up. You got to have conversion tracking set up. You got to have, I would recommend getting the call tracking set up because you're really not going to know what you get for your dollars if you're not able to track it. But, Jason, you've been there, kind of done that to some degree, I'd imagine. So, any tips that you have I'm sure would be more valuable than mine.
Well, like I said earlier, we did start small. We started a relatively small budget. I think, to be honest with you, the reason we started is Google sent us one of those cards that says, hey, here's $100 to add to your account if you open it up and try. So that's my first advice is to jump in, to try it. If you're not doing it, you're missing out, because what we found over the past couple of years is that market is growing and your competitors are already there. They're doing it. So you've got to jump in and cast your net, so to speak, in that pond, because there's already people there. They're looking for clients that are just searching online and may or may not find you because you're either not advertising or you're not doing something to get yourself out there. And like Tony said, don't try it. Don't try to hit everything. Be conservative, because you're gonna learn lessons. You're gonna learn lessons in your first month. You're gonna see what has immediately worked. What we did, and I'll be honest, one of the things that we tried to do is we try to run Google Ads for every service area, but we learned over time that you need to niche down and target what has the most value for you, and so then you can focus on that specific area. For us, it was car accidents. So we focus on car accidents on our digital. We don't try to get dog bite cases or slip and fall case type cases through our Google Ads account, because the more value for us is in those car accident cases.
Yeah, good point. Really good point. Because I think every business operates a little differently. You have different margins, you have different salaries, you have different things that you have to do, and you're gonna find that it can even be like on an e-commerce website. They could be profitable on selling desks for offices, but not telephones, right? It just depends on their business and what they're doing. So if you're making a lot more dollars on a certain type of case, and the cost per click from the market makes sense for your business, you may find that, oh, okay, I can't go after everything on digital, but maybe I can do this much on Google Ads and this much on Facebook, and I need TV for this audience because that works better for my business. And so again, spend the dollars where you see the best return, and you'll kind of find out quickly if you have things set up and your tracking set up that there's going to be certain things that work and certain things that don't. And that's going to be the case for almost every AdWords account, whether you're in the legal space or you're the services industry or you're selling things online. Like, everybody has their niches that work, and so you have to just kind of test and see. A question here about call tracking numbers, and the question is about what can I do? How do I set up call tracking without Google punishing me for not having a consistent phone number? So one thing I should call out and make clear. So there's a couple ways that Google. So you can have a phone number right within your ad, and there's it can be an extension or on a mobile device through Google that redirects and can track the call directly from the ad. And then there's call tracking that is set up on your website that knows it came from a paid search campaign or whatever it may be, and the number will generate differently on the landing page. And the majority of the calls are actually oftentimes going to come from the landing page, sometimes on mobile too, through the ad. But that's an important distinction, is that a lot of the calls are going to come from the website, and you shouldn't be punished by Google from that number changing on your website. And on the ad front, you can use Google's, oftentimes you have to, you don't always have to, but you can use Google's call tracking there, sort of the call extensions as well. So you shouldn't be punished by Google for not having a consistent phone number if you set things up correctly. So there's some pieces getting a little technical there, but it's pretty simple. So I wouldn't be overly concerned with that piece.
And just for that matter, I agree. On our website, we actually have a different number pops up. I mean, I think we've got maybe 15 or 20 that are repeated, but pops up each time somebody hits our page.
Right.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay. And there's a question here about Facebook versus Instagram. And question is, can you choose to not show your Facebook ads on Instagram? And that makes sense. For some business, Instagram is a little bit different demographic. It's probably not always the best space for legal, although it can be for remarketing. But you should be able to just sort of elect to not run on Instagram, to not expand that reach within Facebook platform itself. So you can, particularly like with any display or, whether it's Google Ads, display, or on Facebook, you're going to have to go through and take some time, over time, to just continue to refine your audiences. And you may see that Instagram isn't viable, so you unselect it. You may see that mobile is not viable from a remarketing standpoint. The clicks aren't as great, so you may have to opt off of mobile. You may have to continue to tweak your audiences. So audiences can become more and more sophisticated. I'd still say get up there and tweak, because it's going to be a lot cheaper for you. But any audience can be, can be tricky, but it should be valuable. It's worth the time to invest there and to tweak it, just like you would do now.
Yeah, I would agree. That's something you want to test. I wouldn't immediately exclude Instagram. I wouldn't do that. I would test it, because Instagram, you may want to change an ad or use running a different type of ad that posts on Instagram, but I wouldn't immediately exclude them. You want to test. You want to see if there's any value there before you shut it down.
Yeah, for sure. And again, it's just going to vary to business, but to Jason's point, it's a lot of, it's testing and refinement. And I know we're talking about a lot of different topics, so it can seem like a lot, but again, kind of boil it down to a few simple things a week and kind of focus on that core stuff first. And once that becomes refined, it's always going to need constant tweaking, but it should become more easier to manage. And then you're going to have the time to do, spend some time on Facebook and then tweak Instagram and then tweak the ads. And then that'll become a little more established. Again, needs weekly love, but you don't have to go through and go crazy with the system. I've done this for 10 years. There are new features in there all the time that I'm not always aware of. I have to ask someone, go do my research. We're posting a blog every day about new things on digital advertising. It's ever evolving. So don't get too, bogged down in something that's overly complex. Just focus on the core stuff, and those things will become easier to manage over time, and you'll have more time to, test new features. But I can't stress enough that the majority of the accounts I see still to this day, even if they've had accounts for a long period of time, are still doing some fundamental things, incorrectly. Haven't added a negative in a month. You should focus on that before you even consider, testing something on like Twitter or LinkedIn. There are opportunities there, but if you're not adding negatives in your Google Ads account, you shouldn't be considering too much in terms of like over optimizing your audiences on, different platforms and whatever it may be. So just keep it as simple as you can. Focus on the core stuff. And then as your accounts become more and more sophisticated, you'll have more time to go ahead and focus on things that are a little bit more advanced. So that's pretty much it, guys. I don't want to take too much more time, or, I dragged a little through the slides, and, we've been going on here for a while, but I really appreciate everyone's time. It's about 1/2 the hour here. So we'll send a follow-up with the recording. And, if there's any questions, just reach out to me, reach out to WordStream, whatever it may be. We'll send a follow-up. We're happy to help. I don't know if there's any one big takeaway that you'd want to leave people with, and I'll share my final 2 cents here, but, really appreciate your time, Jason. Would love the value that you added today in terms of, being a lawyer in the legal space, GLM member. A lot of the challenge that you went through is something that we've seen, and really appreciate it. But I don't know if there's anything that you want to leave people with here, and then I'll wrap up with my final 2 cents.
Sure. Thank you for having me. One of the things, I think the biggest takeaway is like I said earlier, to kind of jump in and try it. It doesn't hurt to try, especially if you're not in digital marketing, especially if you're not doing Google AdWords for your firm. That's the first thing and the biggest thing I would say is you need to be in that space, because it's growing, and it will continue to grow as new technologies come about. So you've got to start somewhere. Specifically with WordStream has helped me out tremendously. We've been using it for a little bit over a year, and it has added tremendous value to what we're doing with our Google AdWords and our Facebook ads that we're running. One of the things that I would mention with being part of GLM, get information from some of the other members, talk to them about it. I'm usually at GLM Summit, so if you want to track me down, I'll be glad to talk about what I do for our digital ads, as well as, again, how WordStream has helped me tremendously. So, but again, thank you for having me.
Yeah, awesome. Great questions, and glad we're able to add value to your business. And you're definitely adding value to us here by, helping us out with this webinar. And, we're passionate about the space, and, making it easier. It's tough, but to Jason's point, you just got to jump in. And, my final 2 cents would be just, give it a shot as well. Go ahead and, get things set up on Google first, and then consider, getting remarketing and call tracking. I would say those are like some of the core principles, but make sure you're tracking everything you're doing so you're not wasting your dollars. You can set a budget really low on Google. It doesn't cost anything, other than what you pay per click to get started. So just start things, be restrictive until you prove the concept. You don't necessarily need to go ahead and spend, $10,000 in a month or more to get what you need. You know, you can prove concepts with really simple low budgets, and then once you see the return or some, you know, sort of elements of a return, then you can scale your budget. So you can do things cheaply. And you know, if you need some help, give us a shout. We have the software, but we also have, you know, services as well, and we have you know, consulting, which almost all of our customers have taken advantage of at the beginning or at some point or consistently for years, to kind of give you that extra hand holding to get things off and running on the right foot. So, you know, those all things are all available, but at the end of the day, you know, we're here to help, and we're, you know, hopefully this content today, if you don't become a WordStream customer, that's fine. Hopefully this kind of helps you out, and we'll follow up here with some email correspondence so you guys can get the recording and, you know, any additional help you need. But really appreciate it, Jason. Appreciate your time, everyone. Thanks for hanging with us. And you know, we're partners with GLM, so we're here to help. And if you can contact them, contact us, and you know, hopefully we can help you guys out with your online advertising. So thanks, everyone. Really appreciate it, and we'll be in touch. Thank you.